Releasing the shame, reclaiming my flame, a spark to ignite this withering pain. Hello, I'm Lotus Opa, and welcome to Healing with Yoga and Creativity. Today's video is going to be a bit different. It's all about releasing the pain through fire. No, I'm playing. We're not really doing fire, but obviously it is about trauma. And so this video, I decided to explore a couple of themes, particularly ACE. So ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And there's a score, there's like 10 questions, I believe. And essentially anything over 4, which is really low, would be considered ACE, like very traumatic. And as you know, CPTSD, there's ways for them to try to gauge on it. And the ACE questionnaire, to be honest, 10 questions that are very, I don't know what year it was made, but when I was reading those questionnaires, like, yes, like I have a high score, over 4, perhaps 7, you know, but what was I trying to go with that? Like, when I was reading the questions, like, it just felt broad, you know, like the stereotypical, did you witness your mother get beat? Okay, yeah, it's like, that's traumatic, but like there's more nuances, I feel like, and a lot of cultural things, or like cultural traumas wasn't really included. So I found this thing. It's called let me look at my phone, my computer. It's more of a, it's called the types of childhood trauma, and and there are 12 types. I'm gonna post it here as we go through the different types. And I like this one so far because it's very broad. And when I was reflecting on it, I was like, okay, check mark that one, check mark that one. Okay, that makes sense. But again, these are just to highlight the type of childhood traumas that are common or folks can encounter. And let's get with it. So as you know, like CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, it's just not one incident. It's technically repeat things, where you repeated incidents where the child's unable to escape, you know? And so that is more different than PTSD, where it's just like one single traumatic incident, whereas CPC, the complexity of it being ongoing. And I kind of like this chart because I could see how many traumas intersect. And we'll get into my attachment style afterwards. All right, so the very first one is bullying. And so it goes like, bullying is recognized as, so bullying is recognized as unwanted aggression intended to hurt based on power imbalance. And so when you think of bullying, like, I feel like every kid, especially if you are Black or a person of color in the white man's land, you most likely got bullied by the white man's devil's child in school. So I know when I first started elementary school, like obviously I was an easy target, being the only Black girl there, you know, as well as my older sister. But there were times where I had to defend myself. So yes, I would say that I did have bullying one, but honestly, the bullying one was just like, out of all the traumas, bullying is just like, it was just easy, you know, because like I realized that a lot of these people who were bullies are insecure folks. That's why they seek that power, you know. So bullying traumas, I would rate that probably, okay, no, I'm not gonna rate it anymore, because like people have like severe bullying, and mine wasn't that severe, so I'm really thankful, but I would still count it, because the next one is complex trauma. And it goes like, repeated exposure to traumatic events leading to long-term effects. This is a big yes and yes and yes. What the fuck? Like, that is the whole point of complex trauma. Mine was a lifelong abuse. Like, I kid you not, the very first time I got hit was probably around 4 years old, And then the last time I got hit was 26 years old. That is complex, mama. Okay. We're gonna skip that one. I don't have disaster trauma, so I'm really thankful on that. I do have early trauma, and it goes going through trauma as a child between the ages of 0 to 6. That is a big yes, yes, yes. So 0 to 6, that is a big year for years for a child's brain that is developing. That is when you should be experiencing love and safety and nurturing. But unfortunately for me, when I reflect at 0 to 6, essentially from 0 to 3 was spent fleeing Somalia. And also at 2 years old, I got FGM, like, female genital cutting. Sorry, I don't want to say M, I should say FGC, female genital cutting, at 2 years old. So that was already fucking traumatic on its own, on top of fleeing war. And then coming to Canada at 3 years old, and by the time 6, because that's the 0 to 6, I was already getting my ass beat by 6 years old. I'll give you an example where this type of abuse was tied to my weight. I would say I was around 6 years old when my mom tried to joke me. So she has this fit, like when she goes into a fit of rage, I witnessed around 4 years old that she was in a fit of rage at my older sister, who was around 6 years old. She was really skinny. Anyhow, I don't know what triggered it, but I just remember I have this core memory of her lifting her up by her neck and her little feet dangling right in front of me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what the fuck, Anyhow, a couple years later, my mom tried that same move on me, but joke's on her, she can lift me up, she had no strength. And yeah, that was trauma, and I realized that being heavier, being bigger, was safety against her, because she never tried choking me after that. She was still beating the shit out of me, but that particular move of Bart Simpson and Homer and Bart Simpson, at least like he's like, why you little shithead, going like this, and Bart feet never leaves the ground. But in my mom's case, it's one-handed, Naya, up, Yeah, so that's early trauma. And we go to the next one, physical abuse. This is like, yes, like, the fuck did I just explain? So when a caregiver or a parent physically injures, touches a child. This is a big one. Like, I'm a sensitive child, but I also have a sensitive body. Like, I kid you not, a little flink, I would have bruises, And so obviously I was showing up to school covered in the aftermath of a physical abuse. I'll give you, and then obviously like the school system failed me because I was showing up to class with obvious physical signs of trauma, i.e. this one incident I couldn't write because my mom beat me with a telephone wire and it caught my finger and it like ripped the whole skin. So the next day I had to go to school. It was a Tuesday. Actually, I don't know if it was a Tuesday, but I'm just going on. But anyway, the teacher, I remember just trying to write something and the teacher was like, oh, Lotus, what happened to your finger? And I was like, in grade 2, like, this is how fucking creative I was. I lied and said that my finger got caught in a door, and the hinges. And she was like, oh, poor you, did your mama see? I was like, yeah, my mom actually did this to me. Anyhow, I told my dad freaked, but he never protected me after that, And then there was also like physical abuse in the sense that like I showed up to school with bite marks one time. Yeah, my mom's fucking savage. Like, you thought choking was bad, like she would pinch you. Oh, those were deadly. I'm telling you, there's a difference between just pinching like this and then blowing a little spiciness to it and pinching it. It's magic. Don't tell me why, but my mom loved to go. She got that extra power and it was so powerful. But bruises from pinch marks, the bite marks, yes, she was a savage. Like, I remember this one time I was trying to push her head away, and I kid you not, she brought the Quran into it and said, I have a right to bite you. To that, And so I remember pushing her and she got really mad. And then she was like, no, I'm your mother. This is my right. Da-da-da. Again, I was in grade 3 and I couldn't, like, I gave up and she bit me. And the next day, on a Tuesday, you go back to school. Same thing. It was a different teacher this time, So it's never like the same teacher, but it shows that it was consistent year by year. Anyhow, this teacher saw my bite marks and was like, oh, who bit you, dear? And I lied to say my baby sister. And she's like, really? Like, this is adult teeth, not a baby's child. She's like, wow, what did you do to make your sister so mad? Like, nothing after that, no investigation of why these were huge bite marks on a, I was 8 years old, you know? So yeah, there was obviously physical abuse. We'll move on to the next one. The next one is okay, I'm not laughing. I'm sorry, you guys. I take this very seriously. Like, these are laughs of nervousness and being like, I still process how fucked up my trauma is. Like, I'm at a point where I'm able to laugh at my own trauma, but I'm not laughing at the seriousness of it. With that being said, oh, it's so inappropriate, Lotus. With that being said, the next category is domestic violence, and this is a yes. This was it wasn't too severe in the sense that like my father wasn't in the picture because he was away studying. But the time he came back, like the abuse was still happening. But I did witness. There was only one incident. Like, okay, so domestic violence, it doesn't have to be physical. It could also be verbal. And my mother had a harsh tongue, and I would sit there and be like, yo, father, why are you taking this? Defend yourself, like, you know, or be like, mom, that's not nice. And so there was a lot of verbal lashing at my father, and he just sat there and took it. I don't know why. I would have been like, listen, Nagyo, don't talk to me like that. But my father, for him. But anyway, he's an enabler. So I'm guessing, like, obviously he dealt with this for the past 10 years before we were born, you know? But yeah, so there was verbal domestic violence, a lot of yelling, a lot of degrading name calling. And then also, the only time I personally witnessed any physical violence was, it was pretty bad. Like, it was the first time I actually saw my mom hit my dad, and she used my baby brother as a bat, boom, take him by the leg, and use his head as the bat part, you know? And that shook me. Like, you know, I was like probably 14. He was probably 1. He was a baby. But there was a lot of like fucked up shit like that. And obviously they're still together to this day. And we as a family, obviously I'm airing this dirty secret, but I don't care. It impacted me. And yeah. So domestic violence, yes. Medical trauma. No, there's no experiencing illness both for the children, for the child themselves, or the family. No, I wouldn't say I carry medical trauma. You know, like, out of the family. Like, I had my appendix removed. Like, that's the most traumatic medical thing that happened to me. Even that was hilarious, because I realized, like, this family don't care about me. I was this close dying. Okay, that is really traumatic. Okay, when I say this close to dying, like, it took me almost 24 hours for my dad to actually take me to the hospital to get it removed. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. You call it trauma? I don't know. Well, I guess it's trauma because they didn't take my medical concerns very seriously. Um, my mom was in the picture. My mom was on vacation when my appendicitis happened. I was like 15, but I remember telling my dad, and I was like, yo, I need to go to the hospital. This is after suffering for like the whole night in pain. And he was like, okay, let me drop off the kids. I told him that I need to go to the hospital at 6 a.m. I didn't get to the hospital till like 10 a.m. And when the doctor finally asked me, he's like, what took you so long? I looked at my father, I was like, tell him I've been asking for, like, I was just close calling 911. I should have just called 911. But yeah, so maybe that is some sort of medical trauma where it was very serious, and my father didn't listen. So the next one, again, I'm laughing because it's hilarious. I've done the work. I'm at a point where I'm allowed to laugh, but we carry a lot of this. So the next one is religious trauma, when a child's well-being is negatively impacted due to religious belief. This is a fuck yes. Literally, as you know, my parents were Muslim. They were abusive Muslim people. You know, like, my perception of Islam is tainted by how I was introduced. You know, and from my parents' view, and then trying to cover the abuse with justification that the parents is always right, or this is the one line that took me out. There's a video that I made about why I left, explaining in more detail because this video is getting too long. But the one line that literally took me out was heaven lies under your mother's feet. As a child, again, now as an adult, I have a different understanding, but as a child, that line was the line that sealed me. I was like, this is false. Like, like, how can you tell me heaven is under my mother's feet when present on earth it was fucking hell? It was to the point that I had convinced myself after watching Cinderella, seeing how she was treating me, that she was not my mother, that she was my stepmother, And then the universe was like, my child, like, this is your doppelganger, That's a whole new story. But it was because of that line that I was like, no, heaven is not under my mother's feet. And my dad sensed that something was off because he tried to instill that with me. I remember this particularly one vicious beating. That's when first time he used that line, and that's when it pissed me off, because obviously I couldn't say that to him, because if I had said that, I would have most probably been, how dare you say that? But now I'm in a place to actually voice it and give honor to that in a part of me. But yeah, so there's a lot of religious trauma. And then also the biggest one is my parents' perception and understanding of Islam is their view, but they think, based on what was taught to them as Islam, that creativity is haram. Like, all aspect of creativity is forbidden. So my artistic side was suppressed and deemed unworthy, and that I will be sent to hell for creating flowers or people or drawing or whatever, or even listening to music or dancing, or even writing, like anything sensuality too, like that was negated. So it negatively impacted my life, where my spirituality, like even now, like I struggle to do certain spiritual acts because of how spirituality was tainted through Islam, like my relationship. So now I'm mending it through myself. But anyways, that is a big yes, religious trauma. And then the next one is refugee trauma. Experiencing trauma due to war, persecution, or fleeing a country. And yes, this is a big yes. I was born in Somalia in 1989 at the height, well, okay, I wouldn't say at the height, but that was when shit was going off, like, And so by the time in 1991, I believe that's when Black Hawk Down happened, around the early 90s. And so by then I was already gone, like I've already fled. And so I know my dear mother, my poor mother, she had to flee on her own, not physically carrying, but she had to flee the country with three little kids, and then come to Canada with 2 little kids. And she would always like look at me, and she carried refugee trauma too, because she would look at me and be like, I wish I left you there. It was the fact that she left Somalia with 3 little girls and then came to Canada with only 2. She had lots of regrets that this one came through, and then that was one of the reasons why I thought that she was not my mother, like she was forced to bring me along. But clearly war does shit to you, and so I know a lot of my fear naturally comes from war. Also, like, when you think of like pregnant women in like in societies that are at war or unstable, that impacts the fetuses. So all those people who are pro-life, if you really are pro-life, you would put a demand on all wars. You would put a demand on all guns, because you cannot be pro-life and be pro-war, because the poor women and babies and children are tremendously impacted because of war. And that's why we have this fucking cycle of war, but we are breaking that. So yeah, so I do carry refugee trauma. Terrorism, no. Grief trauma, no. Emotional trauma, yes, mama. This is a big one too. Oh my gosh, this is an ice queen, So emotional trauma as a result of chronic emotional abuse, often by caregivers. So this is like a nasty, nasty trauma that I carry, and it's at the heart of me being dehumanized. Like, I kid you not, I really thought I was not human. I used to stare at people, be like, why don't feel anything, because I was sliced and diced, turned to ice, mama, But anyhow, emotional trauma, yes. I could give you one, so I'll give you the most insidious form of emotional trauma is not allowing a child to express their feelings, any feelings at all. And so for me, I was not allowed to cry. And I'm a big sensitive person, like, like tears were like a big thing. Like I have like this phrase, why are you crying? It's such a trigger for me. Even though it's like, oh, why are you crying? Like it's such a genuine thing. But I had to tell my therapist this thing because like I was telling her I was a bit sad of something, and she was like, "Oh, Lotus, why are you crying?" And when I heard that, my tears stopped, and she's like, and she saw something, and I told her, I was like, "Listen, like that phrase is very triggering for me, especially when I am crying." Yes, like why am I crying? I'm telling you a story of what happened, but like I explained to her how my parents would use that word and it would escalate to beatings because I was panicking. I was like, I was experiencing an anxiety attack. Of course, I'm fucking crying because you're yelling at a child, you know? And so I was not allowed to cry. And then I had an older sister who was not a crier at all. And here I am, just, nah, yeah. And I would cry, just any raised voice I didn't like. Yes. And then on top of that, I was not allowed to be angry. I get my ass beat. I would hear that's like why you're sticking your tongue out. No, why you're sticking your lips at me, or why are you pouting. And so heaven forbid that I get my ass beat. I can't show any emotion. I have to be happy that I just got my ass beat, or I can't give you the silent treatment. But joke's on her, I gave her the silent treatment. Yeah, so that is it of it. So my A score was 7, and then this score of 12, I have 8. Yeah, so like this is like a lifelong thing that I have to heal, but it's beautiful because I realize that like it forms you, and it shows you that you're not in this alone, because I'm not the only one with fucking religious trauma. Hey ex-Muslims, hey ex-Christians, hey ex-Judaisms or ex-Jews. Would you call them ex-Jews? I don't know. But anyways, like I know I'm not the only one with like religious trauma, refugee trauma, and so it's good that I'm at a place where I can share this. Like I've been doing this to work for the past 5 years. As you know, I'm an avoidant. Like all of this resulted in my attachment style, like emotional trauma, domestic violence, physical abuse when your caregiver or parent physically injures you. Like all of that contributes to your attachment style. And my attachment style was fearful, avoidant, hey, but I'm not fearful, avoidant anymore. So I read that book, The Attachment Theory, or Attached, and essentially it's saying that how at the higher top of the attachment styles, there's 3 attachment styles. The top is secure, so you are secure with yourself, you had good upbringing or whatever, you work towards that secure attachment style. And then there's anxious, and then there's like the avoidance. And it was saying how like you're not doomed to whatever level you're at, but you could work towards secure, and you would have to go, obviously it's not like you can go from fearful, avoidant straight to secure, missing, anxious. I don't know why I went on a tangent, but like I could see that happening where like, yes, like I was a fearful avoidant, but right now I don't have that fearful avoidance or that avoidancy. It's more anxious. Yes, that's what I was trying to get at. Like I can see myself like at the past, like before I did the work, I was a clinical textbook style fearful avoidant. Now maybe anxious. I don't know. We're getting there. But yeah, so as you know, I'm reclaiming my flame. There is flame inside of me. So put your lattice up. And yeah, so thank you for watching. I am Lotus Oba, and that was Healing with Yoga and Creativity. I hope we come together as we heal our mind, body. We can bend societal expectation. Thank you.